Fate Extra Record, right?
No, Extra Records the game. This is just called Fate Extra.
Oh, okay. All right. It's confusing because I looked it up and then it was like, yeah, Fate Extra has been adapted into Fate CCC and Fate Extra Last Encore and Fate Extra Record. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't sound right. Um,
Do you need me to break down what's going on here?
I feel like that would be beneficial to my sanity, if
Okay.
not the review of this actual book series, which is relatively short, and we did read the entirety of. At least my understanding was we read the entirety of it because I read six
Yes.
volumes.
Yes, we read the entirety of it.
Okay.
So the way this breaks down is there's the original game Fate Extra. That is the
Hmm.
game I was streaming on the channel for the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
You've tuned in a couple times to that.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and then I'll just go ahead and break out to the sequel game dash midquel Fate Extra CCC, which is the other one you probably saw.
Yes.
There's an anime called Fate Extra Last Encore that is
Yes.
an alternate story to Fate Extra. Don't
Okay.
need to worry about that. Might never even come up on the channel.
But it's an
Uh,
anime, right? It's in the
yeah,
hat.
yeah, this one's not.
Wait, didn't you put Fate Extra Last Encore in the hat?
I didn't see it. If I did, I was drunk. I'm kidding. I could have put it in there, but I think I've at this point resolved not to.
I swore to literal God I had seen it. I could be wrong. Yeah, Fate Extra Last Encore's in here.
Oh shit, it is in there.
Yeah, no, you have Fate Apocrypha, Fate Extra Last Encore, First Order, Stay Night, Heaven's Feel, Unlimited Blade Works, and Zero were all in there originally.
Well, shit, guys. I guess this is happening eventually. But there's going to be another video on Fate Extra going up on the channel either before this or after this. Who knows? Um, but it's, in my opinion, the weak, like the weakest Fate anime series in terms of just raw quality,
Like animation quality or like story quality?
story quality.
Okay. So, but
Like it's
I
not.
still
There's
get some sweet, sweet visuals from it.
here and there. Um, but what we read was the manga adaptation of Fate Extra. There
Yeah.
are two other mangas for Fate Extra.
Yes.
One for Fate Extra CCC that directly
Uh-huh.
adapts the game,
Okay.
and one that's an alternate story to CCC called Fate Extra CCC Foxtail.
Yes, I saw that.
Um, I would love to go through the other two with you, but one is incomplete and the other one is not fully translated. So if we do get around to that for off the
We
shelf,
have to wait until,
yeah, I'd like to wait for the one that needs to be translated to be done first.
yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Um, on the optics of the series itself, I mean, I didn't realize that this was so old because I think the way you brought this up to me was that, and I could see it now on Manga Dex, was that you were like, hey, this series just finished getting translated into English. And I can see here that chapter like 38.5 or whatever was like 4 months ago, right? And actually, we don't have it all translated into English because there's 41 chapters of this. We're still missing three. They're extra
No,
after stories, right?
no. So what happened here is that it's
Is it
based on
those
different
point
releases.
fives?
It's some of those point fives were coupled into single
Oh,
chapters for
okay.
the translated release, but not the original where
Okay.
in some translations they were counted separately.
Okay. Okay. So we do have all of it, but it's as of like 4 months ago in English. So it
Yeah.
is relatively newly fully translated, at least on this site. And I
Mhm.
assume there's nowhere else where it was translated earlier into English.
I remember seeing like people like going, "Oh my gosh, it's fully translated finally!" Like I
Yeah.
remember the hype around that when that happened. Um, but yeah, I wanted to read this because we just finished, or not we, but I just finished the game for the channel on stream, and I'm trying to go through sort of everything I can of the sort of extra sub series of Fate Extra, or the
Mhm.
extra sub series of Fate, and just thought it's a completed manga series. Why not just force Seki to read it and do it for off the shelf?
Well, yeah, and to be fair, these are not long volumes, right? Like
No,
it's like 38.5 according to this translation, but 41 chapters total across 6 volumes. That's not a lot. I mean, this was not a lot to begin with. These are not exceedingly long chapters, you know? So it wasn't hard at all to like get through this. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like I didn't really have any issues reading my way through it. Um, Nero Claudius isn't necessarily my favorite character, but there's plenty of other characters that I enjoyed just as much. Um, and as someone who one of my great joys in life, right, when playing Fate is to try to guess sometimes who the servants are before it's revealed. Very much enjoyed seeing Buddha show up at the very end. Knew that was Buddha. Did not need anyone to tell me it was Buddha. I did, in fact, look it up though, just to make sure I wasn't wrong. Because I was like, Saver is Buddha, right? Like, that's definitely Fate's
Yeah.
interpretation of Buddha.
Yeah.
Like that's what this is, right? And Saver's like one of those classes.
One of
Yeah.
those one time, never going to appear again, not even an FGO
Classes.
classes.
Yeah, what was it that just recently it was a sharpshooter or whatever, gunslinger.
Their Gunner is an
Yeah,
unspecified one that we've never
gunner.
really seen,
Yeah.
but there's Watcher,
Yeah.
there's you don't see it in this adaptation, but in the game there's a character that goes by Funny Vamp.
Yeah. Those funky little classes that trip me up that I either always remember and assume are more common or never remember. Like how I always forget the altar is a class.
Well, Alter's not a class, it's a classification.
Same thing. Same thing. Or
And
whatever.
actually,
Actually, or whatever, faker, pretender.
same.
Yeah, that sort of thing. But yeah, Buddha was here. And of course, I love any opportunity to get to see some of my favorite characters. Um,
Don't cut the bullshit. You mean your favorite character?
my favorite character.
Yeah, I figured you'd be pleased at your Coup baby being a present character for the first half of the series, at least.
To be fair, I was also happy that I got to see Gwen, Francis Drake, and Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh was like barely in here. He was a side
But he
character.
was here. What's a Fate series without Gilgamesh? It's not even a Fate series.
I mean, he wasn't in the original game.
Shut the fuck up. um, there were, of course, a couple characters I don't technically know yet. So I tried to just blank that out as much as I could because we actually haven't done some of the servants that showed up, like even briefly, or were mentioned here. So you know,
I think two.
two,
We
I
haven't done
think.
two servants. One of them, I wasn't actually that worried about whether or not you were spoiled here because that character has so many just like random obscure variants. Your reaction to one being spoiled is not going to fuck me over in the slightest.
No, because it's Lubu and Robin Hood, though.
No, there was another one.
Was it Atalanta? No, we've done Atalanta.
No, Atalanta wasn't even in here. I think she was only maybe barely mentioned as a cameo on a bonus chapter.
Wait, but who besides
Punch
Lubu
guy,
and don't remember? Huh.
Li Shuen.
I thought we did Li Xuan.
Nope, we haven't done Li Shuen yet.
Oh,
You've met him in
yeah.
campaign.
That's why. But I've also yeah, okay. But Robin Hood and Lubu were the two I remembered not having done. I didn't remember not doing Li Xuan because I think I used Li Xuan in campaign once. So I'm more familiar with him, even though I don't know what he looks like. I'm ignoring the art. I'm just blanking. It's a physically formless, generic anime character. But yeah, so three characters that I didn't technically recognize. I did try to just kind of like ignore the art at least, but like, I'm not gonna remember it by the time we get to doing them on the channel like in great detail. So I'm not unhappy about that. Like I said, I got to see a lot of characters I knew, like Tamama no Mai during the Amake.
Yeah, during the Omake. Although she did have a cameo in the main story. Because
Yeah, she did.
main villain Twice Peaceman, she was his servant way before the Buddha.
Yeah, yeah. But Buddha was cooler.
Look, I'll have you know I did a complete playthrough of Kamen no Mae.
Yes, I know you did. I voted against Tamama no Mai. I voted for Ronnie.
Ronnie wasn't a choice, and that was a different poll.
Oh,
It
well,
was Tomo no Mae versus Nero and Emiya.
oh, I think I voted for Emiya in that poll.
Yeah, there was no way.
Actually,
No
yeah.
way in hell Emiya was winning that, not gonna lie.
I'm not surprised
Kind
Tamama
of
no
feel
Mai
bad.
won. But yeah, no, it was nice to see characters that I'm familiar with, even outside of the servants, like Kire, and fucking Rin. I almost called her Ishtar when I saw her for a hot second.
So, fun fact about that Rin, that is not the
Oh
same
boy.
Rin from Fate Stay Night. That is like even multiversally
Yeah.
not. It's actually her like twice removed niece or something like that from a bastard marriage or from an illegitimate marriage or an illegitimate child on their family. It's weird, but like if you pay attention to the final pages, her hair is not black, it's blonde.
Oh. So
It
she
is
looks
written
like a
to be.
Reshka doll.
I mean, that's what Areshka Gall's design was based on.
Yeah, yeah.
But she was written to be to mirror Rin so that like really any characterization you get of her is supposed to be pretty much identical to Rin. It's supposed to just give you a different view on Rin as a character.
Well, I'm gonna be honest. I've been presuming that anytime I see the same character repeated across two series, it's a multiversal kind of thing where it's technically a separate person, anyways.
And like 90% of the
Um,
time, it is.
yeah. So like that doesn't super change, the fact that I'm like, oh look, it's Rin. Oh look, it was. I almost said, oh look, it's Ishtar when I was reading it, and I was like, wait, that's not Ishtar, it's Rin. It doesn't really matter if it's Rin's illegitimate bastard niece. I don't. It's
And
Rin.
the same
It's
holds
fine.
true for Shinji. That's not the same Shinji. Partially,
But
I assume because Nasu didn't want to deal with trying to make a sympathetic Shinji
but
out of whatever's happening in Fate Stay
but
Night.
hear me out. Is it the same Kire?
Kinda, yeah. It's just not multiversal. This guy was recreated from the data of the same Kirei.
I actually love that.
That said, there are instances of multiversal characters in the game that happen to cross over into Fate Extra. Like at this point, you read Witch on the Holy Night. You're familiar with Aoko and Toko. They're both in
Yeah.
Fate Extras multiversal variants.
Yeah. And I recognized Alice. Um,
That's just a different character altogether, just shares a name. I know, crazy, isn't it? So many different characters to keep track of.
Respectfully, I would like fate to not do this to me.
It's just unfortunate that both her and Alice from Witch on the Holy Night um share motifs in terms
Uh-huh.
of a general characterization.
Uh-huh. At least it wasn't Artoria.
Here's another stupid one that's completely unrelated.
I swear to fucking God, if you say there's an Artoria version of this.
No, Artoria actually doesn't appear at all in Fate Extra. But do you remember Robin Hood's master, Dan Blackmore?
Yeah.
Dan Blackmore shares a last name with a kind of not really a character, but a location in case files of Lord Elmwood for the Blackmore Cemetery from that one Gray arc.
Yeah.
Completely unrelated.
Well, that's unimportant. Like I said, though, I am glad it's not Artoria. It's Nero Claudius. So just something different. Nero Claudius is not my absolute favorite, but it was fun. I don't hate Nero Claudius. At least it wasn't Nero Bride.
Well, we'll get to that one day, I'm sure.
I don't want to know.
Trust me, you don't, having
I
now
don't want to
understood what the
know.
context for that original design was.
I don't want to know. I will live my life happily in peace and absolute um what's the word?
Ignorance.
Yes, ignorance of that of anything there. I don't want to know.
So we've talked a lot about the returning characters. Do you have any thoughts on the new characters? Like, obviously, I'm sure you didn't pay much attention to the servants, but we had a couple new characters here that
Like
were
our main
either
character Kun.
yes.
Yeah. Um I think That's a good way to put this. I struggle sometimes in all of the Fate series with the non-servant characters, and not necessarily for the reason that you believe, right? Because there are certain characters who I've grown to really appreciate over the course of watching them multiple times, or hearing about them, or seeing more of them than just like the first episode I was introduced to them, right? Like I feel a lot more towards Kire. Like I have, a lot more positive feelings towards Rin after watching Unlimited Blade Works, etc. But I really don't think that Fate is particularly good at creating enticing and interesting main characters, in general. Um, at least not like at first go of it. I think a lot of the times when we're reading stuff, I don't necessarily feel like I didn't necessarily like Kishinami very much for a long time. Like it probably wasn't till like the last two volumes where I was like, he's okay. This is an acceptable character. Um, and maybe that's just because I don't know him, and I think in Fate thus far, it's been pretty much proven by practice that I like the characters more the more I get to see them. And so I always like returning characters, not even the servants, but returning characters more than I like any of the new characters. Because I feel like I have not yet gotten to see or read a single Fate series where I feel like the unique character that this series is centered around, like our main character who isn't a servant, has actually had a really has been written really well in their own series enough that by the end of it I really like them. It's typically the second or third time I see someone that I'm like, okay, it's growing on me like a fungus, like a mushroom in the bottom of your closet.
So regarding Kishinami, at least, I might disagree with you on a few of the things we've read. Like I think the Witch on the Holy Night cast absolutely sticks the landing for their original work.
Yeah, but which not to be that person, but Witch on the Holy Night almost doesn't feel like Fate. I lump that in with Garden of Sinners.
Okay, I'm glad you say that. I only said that because I wasn't sure which way whether or not you were lumping them in or not.
No, I'm not.
Because
I'm not including Garden of Sinners
okay,
or Witch on the Holy Night because I associate those two more together than I do either of them with the other Fate stuff that we've done. Like when I
and
say Fate, I mean Fate Stay Night, Fate Zero, Fate Unlimited Blade Works, Fate Grand Order First Order, Heaven's Feel, and all the Elmolai stuff.
like if
And
we break it
Avalon and a couple of the other mangas we read.
like breaking it down here, I think Shiro the like I don't think you like Shiro, but at least knowing the Emiya stuff and getting his deal from UBW, I think it
But
helped you a little bit with
well,
him.
that's what I mean. So second series felt better about Shiro,
With
right?
Shiro, I think the issue is that for one, the fan base likes to harp on a lot how much more characterization you get from him in any one in the visual novel. But also, that's one story split into three different routes that you got to experience piecemeal one by one by one.
True.
So,
And
like, you don't get the well rounded view of Shiro that all three at once gives you.
yeah, but then I mean you think about Rin, right? I liked her better in Almaloy and in Blade Works than I did in the original. Sakura, I just never liked at any point. Just did not. Kirei, it took a few appearances of Kirei for me to really get with the program,
But I
start
think
actively enjoying that character.
with these characters, we're going to ignore the Sakura comment because I don't want to open the can of worms with Sakura fans. With the other characters, though, they're not main characters, and it seems like you tend to like them when you're supposed to like them. Unlimited Blade Works is, for all intents and purposes, Rin's arc,
Yeah,
not Fate Stay Night, the original.
yeah,
Kirei Heaven's Feel is kind of Kirei's arc,
yeah.
not UBW or the original.
But that's what I'm saying here. Like I don't really think that Fate does a great job with like they're just plain protagonists
And
series by series. Like they do a much better job with surrounding cast. And so the characters who come back as surrounding cast I like better because I get to see more of them and then I feel like more about them and then I like them more because of that. So
And
like for example, if Kishinami came back in another series later on that we read, like let's say it's, you said CCC is like sort of a sequel, like a midquel, right?
yeah,
Let's say so if Kishinami shows up in CCC, and keep in mind I've been on like one stream. I don't know if this is true, but if like postulating if he were to show up in CCC, not necessarily as the main character, but like there's a potential I might like him more in that,
so
if that makes sense.
I think Kishinami is a bit unique, along with one, not unique because there's one other character I'd kind of put like this, but I think if we go to the other series that we've done, Fate Zero doesn't really have a main character, and we're gonna ignore Elmoy because that's different. And was
But
there what was
Almond
another one
is
we've done?
wonderful.
Is there
Heaven's
another Fate
Feel?
series? Heaven's Feel is just Fate Stay Night. That's just another
Uh,
route of Fate Stay Night.
then I don't think we've officially watched another Fate
FGO.
series. FGO, that's it. Yeah.
And I think FGO and the Kishinami Hakuno that you saw in this series have a very similar problem. They're
Mm,
both adapting silent protagonists
mm,
from a video game where you're supposed to like, this is my avatar.
that's
You haven't really had anything to
yeah.
make you like the FGO protagonist Ritsuka Fujimaru, which is not surprising because they haven't figured out his character or her character for the female variant. Anything beyond the gag series, they don't really have much
And
characterization of them.
that's fair. I don't like Ritsuka very much. I prefer the female character because of the gag series. As a matter of fact, currently. Um
The male character does have his own gag series where he gets a lot of characterization that I think you'll like a
yeah, but
lot.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
seen
I
the gag series stuff.
You've seen the FGO gag series bunch in the hat. That'll happen eventually.
Yeah. So I think yeah, I
But
just I don't think because these are adaptations of games and the games are all visual novels, right? In some way or another, that means that your protagonist is always going to be a little bit lackluster, self-inserty, meant
I
for
think
you to take on your own will through them. That means that they don't really have, per se, a vocal strong character, and Fate doesn't do a great job of writing a vocal strong character for them later.
I think the reason why I broke down the series we've gone through so far is just because I wanted to cover your ass because there are protagonists in Fate that fans really, really, really like.
Yeah.
That's just not been covered by the scope of what we've done.
Well, I mean, okay, yeah. I mean, obviously you have to take that into account. Like consider the scope of what I've read and what I've seen and what I've played.
And the
Um,
fact that you're excluding pretty much the other like the other three, although I don't think Tsukihime the adaptation did much better than Fate here, but the other two good things that we've done for Type
mhm.
Moon,
Yeah.
you're not
So
including those here.
yeah. So it's like I feel like the issue I have is a very natural one to have, is that the protagonist just feels, you know what? Here, I can make a great comparison. He feels like a male version of Toru. He's just there to move the plot along.
And
And that's a valid character type. I just don't like it very much. But like it's the sort of thing I feel like Fate can bring those characters back as like side characters in other stories, and when they do that, they give them a lot more character and autonomy, and so they're more interesting when I see them then.
so as far as Hakuno goes, I think that Hakuno does suffer from being a player character in a self-insert way. But Hakuno has always had his or her like unique fans from the works. A, because Hakuno's writing gets significantly funnier in the sequel for some reason. And B, because and this is where I read it. If you like were to go and watch my Fate Extra video, I start breaking down this analysis, and I think you said that your perception kind of changed in the last couple volumes. I assume once you get into the Ronnie and Twice Peaceman stuff with Hakuno,
Mhm.
and you start getting more of that perception of Hakuno as an NPC. I think that stuff that happens in game as well, where that starts coming to the forefront more towards the end of the game, and I think that kind of gives Hakuno a little characterization here that you don't get for the vast majority before that plot twist.
Yeah, it's hard because it's a 6 volume series, and the character doesn't really in any way come into any semblance of being their own being until like volume 5, 6,
Now,
and then it's over. And like, I mean, keep in mind, this is all I've read of him, like this is the only thing I've seen him in. Like, I don't pay it when I tune into your streams. I'm
mhm.
not watching or listening to what you're doing, like on video. I'm there to interact with chat and to not spoil myself for servants that might show up, right? And so like this is very much so the only way I've interacted with extra. And I just don't like the main character because there's not much to him overall. But once again, it's I mean it's a visual novel, you know? You know what other anime had this problem? An anime that I put in the hat? Kamigami no Asobi. Ludere Deorum. You hated that. Everyone hated that. She has no personality. But it's a fucking visual novel dating sim game. Like she's not meant to have a personality.
I do think that it can get better with visual novels. Like I think again, if I go back to Shiro, I think Shiro is significantly better when considered in the scope of the visual novel as a whole, even when you look at all three adaptations, as opposed to just the one Fate Stay Night route that you started with.
I can't believe I'm going to say this. But if you're going to bring up a visual novel where your characters have personality, why didn't you go for Witch on the Holy Night?
Because that one doesn't have choices, so it's not implicitly trying to have you reflect yourself onto the character as much, if
Yeah,
at all.
but still, if you were just gonna go for like a visual novel where the characters have more characterization,
And I
Witch on the
can't
Holy Night.
Witch on the Holy Night is unusual. It's not the same as with
Yeah,
Hakuno or Shiro. And I can't go to
that's
Tsukihime, which I
fair.
absolutely think is the case where the character has a lot more characterization because you
Yeah,
haven't read Tsukihime
that
and
is
the anime
true.
is a really bad showing.
What's it? No, we did read like one volume of Tsukihime.
Yeah, and I guess like you can be like, okay, this isn't a self-insert character. This guy just murdered a bitch.
Yeah, I was gonna say Tsukihime, the manga was way better than this.
Um,
Even though we only read like one volume.
so I do absolutely see where you're at with Hakuno, and I think largely that is the general place where fans are at Fate Extra. Is Hakuno is they're a little bit interesting with the setup, but not a lot going on as a character.
But then
I
there's
will
like
say
three other things with him and it isn't there.
Hakuno is unique compared to most Fate protagonists in that whenever something is Fate Extra, the main character is still Hakuno. It never switches to like from Shiro to Bizet or from Shiro to like Apocrypha. There's another one. It never switches like the rest of Fate does. It's always Hakuno. So you get a lot more with that character. And even as far as showing up as side characters, here's something fun. Hakuno is a character in a event that's coming out tonight. Like, and I didn't know this that it
That's
was
the
going
one
to
you're
be at
streaming
all.
tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
no idea this was at all going to be relevant when I asked you to read Fate Extra. But Hakuno is
Ah.
actually relevant to FGO right now.
Oh. Well, see, I'll probably like it more when I hear about him in FGO then.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
like, look, you can't. I feel like it's not. I'm not. It's not
I'm
really
just
a judge. It's not really a judgeable offense for me to dislike a character
mhm.
who's mostly there as a self-insert. I feel like I could really only pass judgment once I've seen him in something where he's more of an NPC and less of a self-insert controlled by the player. I feel like that's
Yeah.
the only fair way for me to judge his character. So like I could say that I don't like him here, but like that doesn't mean that I dislike him. It's just that I don't like I don't like self-insert characters.
Yeah, and I just want you to
Yeah.
know I'm not saying all of this to attack you or to even rebut you. I'm saying
Yeah.
all this to say your reading is 1000% right here.
Yeah.
Your general critique, even if it goes against what some of the biggest fans of these characters say, the reason for that is because you're right.
Yeah. No,
Um,
that's fair. I mean, I it sucks too because I feel like I really and maybe this is just a me thing. I don't know. You can fill me in if the Fate fandom would be like behind me in the push for this, but like I'd really love it if when they were to adapt, like if they when they adapt like let's say Fate Stay Night into like a manga or like, this as a manga. I personally would have preferred it if they had just gone all out and like made their main characters like actual character. Like I would have preferred if they had just redone the story a little bit to like make the characters less self-inserting because I understand that this is an adaptation of a game, right? But visual novels are not really the kind of game that you can, especially traditional ones, not really the kind of thing where you can one to one to an anime and still be satisfied with the story, right? So like sure it's an adaptation, but it's one of those situations where I'm like I kind of wish that you had just rewritten the story with
And
this character having a character.
the funny thing is, like, they didn't do it necessarily for this one, but because Hakuno does eventually get more characterization that's very specifically Hakuno that they
Mhm.
just don't touch on here. A character that doesn't necessarily get that in their adaptations that we've covered technically, but haven't really seen in what we've covered, Ritsuka Fujimaru. If we when we do some of
That's
the other
fair.
manga series, Ritsuka's characterization across all the manga series is very different. Even in different chapters of FGO, different writers write Ritsuka slightly differently. It's a
I'm a
little weird.
I'm gonna be honest. I kind of forgot that FGO had a protagonist.
That's because I have you in the campaign and I cut the middleman out and just made you the protagonist.
Well, and then just like
Which
I
I'm going to tell you right now is going to bite me in the butt because they recently did a chapter that supposedly reflects Ritsuka Fujimaru's past. So I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do with that.
yeah, I think yeah, that's something. I just genuinely like in my head I know that Ritsuka exists, but like I just don't.
When I've made you the main character at this point of the
Yeah.
campaign, it's much easier for you to look at where Ritsuka Fujimaru is and just say, oh, yeah, that's me. I'll ignore that character.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't really bring up Ritsuka by name in reacts typically. Like we'll just say the
The
master or
master,
like the female master,
the
which I
player.
think is far more indicative of like the amount of character that is generally represented, since you're the one making the choices in the vocalization. I mean, as someone who has now played a few chapters of
I think the
FGO.
other part is in nothing we've ever done that involved Ritsuka Fujimaru have you entered even like late part one Ritsuka Fujimaru from Camelot or Babylonia.
Nope.
Well, you've seen Babylonia, I
I've
guess,
seen
but
Babylonia.
Babylonia, like some people actually criticize that for not giving Ritsuka some of the more interesting dialogue choices.
I'm gonna be honest. I feel like I don't watch Babylonia for Ritsuka. I watch Babylonia for everyone else. Um, because sometimes I forget that he's in it. Sometimes when I'm thinking back to Babylonia, I think back to like my favorite scenes and my favorite parts, and he's just not in them.
See, this is where I kind of like as far as FGO goes, I kind of want you to get to the later portions because the late like everything pretty much post Babylon because Babylonia I think is the best you can do with the original. Like this is your player insert.
Hmm.
I think a lot of the stuff post Babylonia does a much better job of just telling a story, just a flat out story.
Hmm. That
But
makes sense.
that's its own thing. That's pie in the sky. You're not even through OK on Us yet.
Yeah, at least not myself officially. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm literally further through in the D&D campaign.
but that doesn't
Um,
that doesn't bear into Ritsuka at all. That fucker got
hey,
cut.
hey, at some point I will get my own capture card, and then I will have the freedom to play more FGO. That's that's the that's the goal.
There's a couple other characters we don't need to spend long on them, but like, did you have any thoughts on Ronnie? Who's like, because Ronnie does have that little parallel thing with Ritsuka and comes back to the homunculus stuff where she's not necessarily real, but she's realer than the NPCs, but not really. She's still artificial.
Yeah. Um,
That's like our like besides the returning cast, that's kind of our other like character we get a decent amount of. Not as much as I'd like here, but a little bit
yeah.
more in a lot of the other characters.
No, I get that. I think I like Ronnie as a character. I think she's fun. I think she's
Underutilized.
yeah. And like when talking about homunculus characters, I like her more than
Ilya.
Ilya. Yeah. Like I like her more in the 6 volumes here where I got to see her than I liked Ilya in Fate Stay Night. I don't know if I like her more than Unlimited Blade Works, but Unlimited Blade Works was genuinely fucking fantastic. So it's not a great comparison.
It's the problem here is that Ilya and Fate Stay Night is in Fate Stay Night. Ilya and Unlimited Blade
Yeah.
Works gets murked, and
Yeah.
Ilya and Heaven's Feel had most of her role cut down for film runtime.
Yeah. But I mean, I feel like I did like Ilya better in Unlimited Blade Works. I feel like I understood her more in Unlimited Blade Works than I did in Stay Night. Um,
Ronnie's stuff here is kind of condensed a little bit much because they didn't fully adapt her route from
yeah.
the game, so they don't
Which
do as
I'm gonna be honest, I would love to see a manga adapting Ronnie's route, but with like not us playing Ronnie as like the main character, but just like Ronnie as like an NPC.
you say that, but I'm gonna tell you right now, Ronnie's route is not different enough from Rin's route. Like this is not a
Oh.
Fate Stay Night route thing. One of my criticisms of Fate Extra the game was that the two routes were unfortunately identical to the detriment of Ronnie's characterization.
Uh,
It's not till you get to like Fate Extra CCC where I think you're gonna get any kind of characterization for Ronnie, and that's got like 5 chapters translated.
that's unfortunate because Ronnie was definitely my favorite of the unique characters from this manga. Like I liked her the most.
And I'm not gonna say my thoughts on this character, but what were your thoughts on the main villain of the series, Twice Peaceman?
It was a character.
Okay, so like you need to know that my little standalone video, even in the original game, was me ranting like for 5 minutes about how awful of a main villain Twice Peaceman is and how I thought he was the single worst villain in any Type Moon work.
He exists as a character that has been created.
And let me say, he's better in the manga.
Oh, that sucks. That oh, if this is the better.
He is no, or I don't know if no one's, but he is not my favorite character in the slightest. Like, I couldn't dig
Oh,
into that fucker all day and be like, this is why the ending of Fate Extra sucks.
well, also, he just feels irrelevant most of the time.
The only reason I even got anything out of him at all in the manga was because I knew he existed. So, like, when they talk about him, like, in slight passing throughout the manga, I can catch that. You couldn't catch that, and that stuff's not in the original game.
Yeah. I I think his existence is unfortunate, and if they wanted him to be a villain, he needed to exert more negative influence on the story and our characters than he did because he doesn't actually feel like a villain or an antagonist to me. It kind of just feels like when you're watching a battle anime and you know you have to fight so many people to get to the final fight. And like, yeah, they're all kind of your antagonists because you have to fight them all, but they're not really antagonists,
The
you
only
know?
thing, his only role in the story is to serve as a foil to Hakuno, who only got characterization in the last like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I would have preferred at the end if he had just gotten away and been like, I'll get you next time.
and I think he has like little brief things that he comes back for, and he has a slightly bigger role in the anime thing,
Mm.
but like he does not get that much more in Type Moon. They kind of cut their losses with this guy.
That is unfortunate because I feel like you could really I don't know. I feel like you could have done a lot more than you did because like he has Savor.
He needed to be in Kirei's role. Like we needed
Yeah.
to remove Kirei because that would make the villain way too obvious by the end if we just said, "Oh, it's Kirei again."
No, 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 Knick Knack. I fully believe. So there's one thing that I hate about Bleach, right? And it's that Aizen is always the villain or always somehow masterminding things, right? It's not good. Bleach's author should have figured out something new. Aizen did not always need to be the villain. In contrast, Fate needs to understand that Kirei is the only good villain and he needs to be behind everything somehow. I want every reveal to be that somehow Kirei is behind it.
So
I
I'm
don't
not,
want other villains, Knick-Knack. I want Kirei as every villain
I promise you
across
I'm
all
not spoiling
universes.
anything at all here. But like, I'll say this. Kirei is a major villain in a one other work other than Fate Stay Night, and that's FGO Part 2.
Okay. But like I said, I really think that they should just do what Bleach did and make Kirei all the villains. He just needs to be the mastermind behind everything.
As much as I'd like that, it would be just way too obvious as far as the story thing goes
Yeah,
and
but
be
it's
way too
always
repetitive.
obvious in Bleach.
Whereas if they just gave twice Kirei's role, it would be a pretty obvious twist, but it's a new character, so you wouldn't immediately see it coming. And it
Yeah,
would give him more of
yeah.
a presence in the actual story.
Yeah, I see. I could see that. But like I like Kirei, so like I don't mind him being in the role that he's in.
It's still fun to see him, and it's kind of goofy
Yeah,
like that. He's there an entire time, like he is still just as like everything you say sounds like you're up to something, and then he just
exactly.
isn't. So
Yeah.
that part's kind of funny.
Yeah, like for once, Kirei is not the problem. And we all thought he was going to be the problem, but he's not.
I am a little mad that if I remember my Fate extra, because it's been a minute since I read the entire manga. If I remember my manga correctly, they completely cut Taiga. Like Taiga was a major like recurring NPC in the game about as much as
Oh
Kirei,
yeah, no, not.
and they cut her
Oh yeah, no, we didn't really see Taiga.
because she's not involved in the main story at all. But you talk to her a lot in the original game.
Oh, that would have been like I feel like Taiga's one of those characters that's so sassy and fun, to interact with. I feel like that would have been a fun addition. Um,
Seki, you don't understand. In the game, there's a side quest where you get to steal a manga from a student for her.
See, that's the kind of stuff I'm missing.
But
That's the
yeah,
kind of stuff I wish I had access to.
I don't know that I have that much more to say. I think all I can say is I'm never making you play through Fate Extra for the channel because that's its own can of worms to actually do. And I'm never gonna force you to play I don't even force you to do the visual novels, but I'm never gonna force you to play a Fate game in whole for the channel. So like manga adaptations like this, while they are often inferior products, I'm happy they exist for this reason. Because it's easier for me to hand this to you and say, hey, what's your impression of some of this stuff?
Yeah. I think yeah, that's fair because I don't think I wouldn't necessarily want to play through all of something like Extra or CCC necessarily. Um and it would take me so much longer to play through it than like you or something else just because
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not as good with like game controls and I'm not familiar with the systems and it would take me forever and I'd get really frustrated when I kept losing. I mean like I've seen you rage at like losing things multiple times and let's be honest here, of the two of us are arguably better than me at playing any games on the computer. And I would get so much madder so much quicker.
I don't know. This game's pretty easy. It's just rock, paper, scissors, just
Bruh,
worse and harder.
bruh. You've seen me play Wind Waker. You've seen me play Pokemon. The bar is not high. The bar is in fact on the floor, possibly under it.
I'm not saying there can never be a stream where I throw Seki into the middle of a week of Fate Extra and we just see how well she sinks or swims,
Yeah,
but
I'm just probably not ever gonna play it from beginning to end.
yeah.
Yeah. Especially not for stream. I just wouldn't have the patience or quite frankly, the patience to deal with that. Just couldn't. I mean, as it is, sometimes even this manga was like at times I was just sitting there like, ugh.
It's a little formulaic every like, after a while, like going each sort of like, oh, this is your new opponent.
Yeah. And I get it. I get that
Complications beat
that's
opponent.
yeah, I get that that's the format of the series. The story. Like cuz it's a Grail War. I get it,
Even for
but
a Grail War, though, it almost suffers in that it's like pretty straightforward actual tournament arc style.
Yeah.
Because that means it is that formula, and you know you're not going to kill off your main character in this kind of series.
Yeah, your
So it's
main
just like,
character will always win.
what is your wrinkle here? You have introduced villain, wrinkle to that villain, beat villain. That is
Whereas
the
in
formula for all 7 arcs.
Yeah, whereas in Stay Night, you absolutely could have told me that after episode 12, if we didn't keep watching it, you absolutely could have told me that Shiro ends up dead and Rin avenges him, and I would have been like, okay, I can see that. Here, no. He's gonna survive, he's gonna win. We know that's gonna happen because it's a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what's gonna happen. It's
And
that simple.
that's something that kind of applies to the original game too, with it feeling formulaic after a while.
Yeah.
So like it's kind of arcadey without being an arcade game, which is unfortunate, I think. But that's
Well, yeah. It's not the worst though, and I'm certainly not upset at this series.
I think it was good for you to read this just because Fate Extra is such a big part of Fate as a whole these days that
Mhm.
giving you some kind of background in it was probably a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly, this means I can pay more attention to streams on the channel. Will I? Probably not.
You got to see more about that character you asked about because you thought he was hot in the middle of that one
That
stream.
is true. He is, in fact, hot. That's the win. That's my absolute win. That and
Julius is
Ronnie.
still hot.
Yeah, Julius is still hot, and I like Ronnie. I was right to vote for her, even though I didn't know who she was when I voted for her. Yeah,
All
no,
right.
but
Well, if we've got nothing else, do you want to get send us into the outro here?
yeah, don't know what's coming up next. We'll see you with whatever we're doing next. It certainly won't be anything overtly fate related so soon. I think. Maybe. I could be wrong.
I don't know. The upload on this is going to be kind of wonky.
That's fair. But that's not my problem. Like, comment, subscribe.
Bye.